Elizabeth Savage, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you and learn more about your business and your practice and kind of just like we were talking about, like your journey into yoga. So, you opened your studio last year, May of 2022.
I did.
And we were just talking about this, but like how, like explain to the people who are listening, um, your start into yoga. How did you come across yoga?
hmm Yeah, so I started yoga back when I was dealing with an autoimmune disease, and I had tried Western medicine. I had actually tried a lot of like anthroposophical type medicine, shifting my diet and changing my lifestyle, but all of it wasn't tapping into what my body really needed. And so when I met somebody who had practiced yoga and knew yoga um, on their own, something that they could do just without anybody else instructing them, I asked them to teach me. And literally within 5 days of practicing, I started to not need the medication I had been taking. And sure enough, since I've started practicing yoga, and this was probably 15 years ago, um, I haven't really had to deal with any sort of autoimmune issues to the
Mm-hmm.
degree that I did
Mm-hmm.
back then. And whenever a symptom pops up, I know that I need to go back deeper into my practice. So that was really the beginning of my journey into yoga. And it was a very personal experience for me for a handful of years, and then when I discovered a studio setting and, more importantly, a heated setting, that's when the intensity lifted and I began to notice just how precisely my mind and my thoughts connect to my body and the health of my own being, and,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was sold. So, and then just little by little, having taught academically for as long as I had, it just
Yeah.
seemed natural to start teaching yoga as well. And I find, I mean, I call it my vocation because it really is a joy. It's certainly not a job to me at all.
Yeah.
So,
That's crazy that you kind of it's funny how we kind of like stumble into some of these things that we just are, just fall in love with and are super
mm-hmm,
passionate about, right?
mm-hmm. It's reminded me, in fact, I had a conversation with a client this morning before the 7:30 class. She came in and she's really starting to reflect on herself. I think she's maybe in her early 40s and
Mhm.
starting to look at, what are my gifts and who am I and what am I doing with my life? And I'm a strong advocate for only going after that which pulls you forward, that which inspires you and ignites you. And I mean, that's the reason why I have the sunshine as our logo and our symbol, because I like the idea of thriving towards the light that's calling you.
Mhm.
And so in my case, it really was this pull or this drive towards something that revitalizes me constantly.
Mhm.
And the more I do that, the more the world seems to be attracted to what I have to offer.
Yeah.
There's very little effort in that at all when you're being your honest,
Yeah.
true self.
Which is it's difficult to do that, I feel like, in today's society, right? So what are like in your mind, or what are some like tips or tricks like if you're kind of like I'm not sure if like this if I'm going the right direction or maybe I need to shift gears or something. Like how do you kind of like find your light?
You know, for me, it's if you experience a grind that you're not intentionally causing,
Mm.
that would be something inconsistent with who you are. If you have to push or force something, at least in my case, that would be inconsistent with who I am and what
Mhm.
I'm up to. If um, if I dream of it, if I am starting, if I'm daydreaming and something is inspiring to me, then I want to move in that direction. And when I start to behave inauthentically, that's when I start to, when you have conversations with people and you're having an authentic conversation, it
Yeah.
moves fluidly and there's nothing that you're not having to say. You can just say whatever whatever
Yes.
comes to the
Right.
surface. That would be authentic. Where if I start to shape and manipulate and try to produce an outcome with somebody, that's going to be inconsistent with what I want to do. And that's the beauty of yoga is you start to access the sensations of your nervous system. I can literally feel the shift of when I'm starting to try and control something. And if I'm trying to control something, then I'm not maintaining my greatest freedom.
Mm.
And I want to stay inside my greatest freedom. If that
Mhm.
were a lane, that's the one I would choose.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So it's your mind, right? Controlling your mind and stuff, but also your body too, like through yoga, like letting go there as well.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When I practice, sometimes I'll go to other studios and just, kind of to be incognito and hide out and really just allow myself to practice without necessarily being observed. It's hard to teach in my own studio or to practice in my own studio because I have a sense that people might be watching.
Okay.
Whether they are or not, I don't know. I've been told that some people will watch instructors to, see what they're doing.
Yeah.
So when I go elsewhere and I'm practicing, there are days where I'll get on my mat and I can feel a sense of nervousness or anxiousness within me. And what I know that to be is kind of like my ego. Like, okay, how good of a job am I going to do? How good am I going to look? Are they going to be able to tell who I am? Or, something like
Mhm.
that. And I have to pull back and come back into my breath and chill out for a little bit and remind myself why I'm there. And
Mhm.
so there really is, I mean, you can feel, I call it a sizzle almost
Yeah.
in my nervous system if I am trying to force something, or if my ego, which I don't have a problem with egos, but if I am trying to be something rather than allowing myself to simply be,
Yeah.
I can feel that in my body. And that's when I'll come back to my breath and just try to find that what we were talking about earlier, that deepest space in my pond
Mhm.
where I can observe and then choose what I want to become.
Yeah. That that self-awareness, do
Yeah.
you think it's something I'm always curious about. Do you think everybody has that self-awareness? It's like a skill set that has to be developed and it's like a muscle, right? You
It's
can
a mind muscle.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I like to write a lot about that mind muscles.
Mm.
It is everybody absolutely has access to it, I would
Mhm.
think. Now, I mean, I don't have a background in
Right,
psychology at
right,
all,
right, right.
so I'm sure
Yeah.
that there are some wirings that are off, and but for the most part, I would say that we all have access, and it's just a peeling away of layers. And there's never, in my opinion, there's never an arrival. There's always more work to do. As long as we're
Yeah.
busy being a human, our thoughts are going to kind of shade us and cover us up, and things happen, life happens, and, we're jolted out of the present and into, trying to survive a moment, whether it's, a car accident or something dreadful
Mhm.
or something really exciting. And
Mhm.
sometimes people can walk by me and sprinkle a little bit of gossip in my space, and I can feel myself all of a sudden, ooh, I want to, flutter towards the gossip. And, but yeah, all of those things, it's just that constant coming back to that space of stillness.
Yeah.
And I do believe that everybody has access to that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just how much of you, um, how much energy or effort have you put into, being aware of that?
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
much time you have.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and since then, having studied and taught world religions and looked at all of the different cultures and the stories that we have, that we use to really support our own sense of security, my parents will oftentimes they say that they failed with me, and I don't have anything against the Catholic Church. I celebrate all religions, and, but they ask me, "Do you ever pray?" And I have to think about it, and I'm like, I'm always praying.
Mm.
I'm always praying. If I'm breathing, for me, it's a form of presence.
Mhm.
So, it's a walk of life.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah.
So going back to your studio, so you opened May 2022, like we
Mhm.
said. What led you to getting your own space?
Um, I really just got tired of driving around everywhere. I was I was spending more time in my car
Mhm.
than I was doing anything else, and
So
it was
you're
popping around from an academic class at St. Pete College over to a client's house, over to another house, and then over to somebody else's studio that I was
mhm.
renting the space from to work with clients, and it just got to be too much. And
Mhm.
I knew something needed to change, and the location was just key. I
Mhm.
really I really got lucky, super fortunate that that
Mhm.
space opened up, and it was literally like 7:30 in the evening, and I knocked on the door, and somebody was in there working because it was owned by Geographical Solutions
Okay.
originally.
Yeah.
And so this high-tech security company is inside, and there's one man in there working, and there were TVs everywhere, and it was all men and cubicles and stuff. And I
Yeah.
walked in, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if this would do it, but maybe that room over there would work,"
Yeah.
And but they were adamant that I needed to rent the entire space if I was going to. And I mean, it's perfect for downtown Palm Harbor.
Yeah.
There's so many restaurants and bars, which I love, and I tend to go to all of them from time to time, and people come in and ask, where can we go? But we didn't have anything like this in downtown Palm Harbor, and
Yeah.
it's right there by the water. People can
Yeah.
bike. Like, I even have a little section where people can bring their golf carts to and park and or ride their bikes
Cool.
too. It was really important to me that I could support people biking there and, taking the time to take care of their bodies, even if that meant the journey from their home to the
To
studio.
the studio.
Yeah.
Did you, so you mentioned earlier you live nearby the studio.
Mhm.
Is that how you found the
Mhm.
place? Just so
It
you
is.
just saw a sign for rent,
I'm
for
two and a
lease?
half blocks away.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the little for lease sign went up, and I looked at it for about 5 days and then finally knocked on the door, and the guy was like, "Come on in."
Yeah. Did you have a vision for the studio? Had you been thinking about,
No.
creating a studio? No.
No.
You
I
just saw the
really
sign and you're
didn't.
like, "Oh, this could work."
I really didn't, and, it's funny because people tease me now, and they're like, "If you've been inside the studio, you know that the outside is painted purple.
Yeah.
It's white and purple. It was once green, and, the inside is one of the west room, which is our heated room, is all purple, and, I had no intention of painting it purple. I had no idea. I just knew that shine and that sunshine sense was what I was gravitating towards. Other than that, I didn't even have a name for the studio at that point. And the reason why everything ended up purple is it's a funny story, but it's actually Bible black is the color of the studio.
Okay.
And I did that because I had somebody, when I invited somebody to come practice one day, they said, "Oh, no, I can't do that because I'm Christian." And I just kind of stopped in my tracks and thought, "What? You can't practice yoga because you're Christian?"
Mhm.
And I know a little bit about the theory behind that,
Mhm.
but it really kind of shook me. And so when I went looking for colors to paint, the first one that popped up was called Bible Black,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
was that purple color. And I
Yeah.
thought, "I'm running with this. I am totally running with it." So, and that was one example of how everything unfolded.
Yeah.
I really have strengthened the mind muscle of allowing the world to kind of bring to me what it wants. So literally, the color and a lot of the design, one of my dear friends and instructors painted the East room, which is more of our yin space. It's kind of the
Mhm.
quiet meditative room.
Okay.
And it's this beautiful ombre color. It goes from that, it's almost like looking at the sea. And,
Mhm.
little things like that. But I knew that she was capable of that. And I knew that she was a magnificent painter. And so I asked her to come in and give me her thoughts. And that room is pretty much her vision.
Yeah. So
So
partnering with other people around you, I think, makes a huge difference, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost one of my mantras is, I have to get out of my own way,
Mm.
and I operate more like I'm a vessel, and the world will come and ask, "What can I be filled with?"
Mhm.
And or more importantly, whatever it is that I'm holding the space for everybody else. So we have an abundance of workshops. And the reason why we have those workshops is because people come in and say, "Hey, would you mind if we did an Ayurvedic workshop? Or I really want to do belly dancing. Can I can teach it. Can I hold a workshop here?"
Mm.
My answer is always yes.
Mm.
It's amazing what our community has to offer.
Have you always been like that? Like that sort of approach and mindset to life, or is that kind of developed?
I've probably always had the inkling within me,
Mm.
but it is certainly more pronounced now than it ever has been. I trust my gut a lot more now
Yeah.
than I had in the past. And a good example is my first go at establishing a business was I decided to start offering yoga for teenagers. And I had mentioned I was raised Catholic. I grew up going to Catholic schools, and we always had retreats at least twice a year.
Okay.
And my children, who are now 18 and 22, did not go into a school that offered retreats like that. And it occurred to me as I watched my own teenagers grow up that their friends didn't have access to that sense of community and safety and security that I had growing up. And it really created a sense of foundation for me. And so I thought, "Oh, I'm going to create this teen program and I'll take these teens on retreats, and it'll be, completely secular, but yoga based. And it will help us all kind of come into our own being and recognize we're all humans and we all have our, faults or whatnot, but
Yeah.
love really is what matters most." And And so I had this great idea. I did a couple of retreats. I did a few, series of teen yoga, but it didn't really take off. What I found was parents wanted their kids to do it, but the kids
Kids
didn't
didn't wanna do
necessarily want to do it,
it.
you know? So that's one
Yeah,
example of me being like, here's a good idea. Let's take it out into the world and see what we can do. And
yeah,
it just kind of went and
yeah.
fizzled a little bit.
So
And
being
it's
okay
still
with that,
there.
right,
But yeah,
right.
it bruised the ego a little bit, but not
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
I just wanted something great out in the world. And so now I have recognized. So if on the Myers Briggs, I'm a ENFJ. And so what that means is I'm a protagonist. I am that kind of person I'm a great leader, but I'm not the kind of leader that stands out and directs the world.
Mhm.
I'm the leader that's kind of, like I said, holds that vessel. It's just like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah,
And I can um, moderate and allow, give people tasks if they need tasks. But more importantly, I enjoy having people come in and say, I really want to do this. And I'll say, okay, great. Here's how you can do it,
yeah,
and give them that inertia and that venue to do something with.
yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What about, starting the studio? Was there any, like, sort of, nerves there or second guessing, or was it just like, it's just
No,
yeah,
it was so funny. There were no nerves. I loved every moment. So I signed my lease. My favorite number is 2. I signed my
okay.
lease on February 22nd, 2022.
Oh, wow.
And I waited 2 days on purpose for that. And then it was just go to it, just start building.
Yeah,
And I had so much fun creating that space that I'm
mm,
starting to wonder if I need to create more
more
spaces or
another
do something else.
space,
I don't
yeah,
wanna grow. I don't want to, people have asked me, "Are you gonna open up another studio?" And I'm like,
yeah,
"No, I don't need to do that. I'm gonna expand in different ways, not in, like, the physical sense." Um, but it was so funny. We opened on May 7th and people started coming in, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, "Oh my gosh, I have to put on like a sales hat now and a marketing
mm,
hat, and I have to
mm,
figure, like I wasn't prepared for that. I just was creating a space for people to come to.
yeah,
And fortunately, it wasn't a hard sell. It
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
very difficult. People flocked in and it's amazing how grateful the community in Palm Harbor is to have that space there. I
cool.
mean, it brings me to tears every day. They come in and they thank me, and I'm like, but you're the ones that are, you came in, all I did was paint and build and stuff,
Right, yeah,
So even instructors come in and they're like, "Are you hiring? Hi, this is my name." And it's been, I mean, knock on wood, it's been a really great blessing. And I would say it's consistent with me maintaining just trusting my gut and moving
yeah.
forward with what is authentic.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like, if we all did that more, right, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I remember reading, I think it was Blink by
Mhm.
Malcolm Gladwell,
Mhm.
and I think he talks about there, like, that's the
Yeah.
main premise of the book, right? Just trusting your gut.
Right.
Like, that's what it was. It was like we make the right decision within, like, seconds of something showing up or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And then but we
And then our
delay.
thinking
Yeah,
seeps in and
yeah,
yeah, it changes I mean, fear is huge. It's a huge one. I
yeah,
mean, I'm right now, it's summertime. There are people that are, members who are like, I'm traveling. Can you pause it for a little bit? And I can feel my heart go, oh my gosh, is the business going to be
yeah,
okay? I
yeah,
can feel the
yeah,
worry sink in. But I've definitely gotten better and better at allowing the fear to be there. It's
yeah,
okay. And then go back to what matters most.
mhm, yeah,
So I kind of live in the world of a possibility,
mhm.
and just strive towards that possibility.
Yeah, that's cool. So what about, if people aren't familiar with yoga,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe you've heard of yoga, you've done practice it a little bit, but, like, how do you define yoga? What is yoga?
Oh, so yoga means to yoke and ultimately to create a union between spirit and body. Um, I find that that can be a little cerebral to understand or even entertain that idea.
Mhm.
So the best, and that's one of the reasons why I've subtitled the studio Mindful Fitness, because it really, a lot of people do come in strictly for the fitness, and that's great. For a long time, we offered a non-yoga membership where people were just doing the sculpt classes and the Pilates and kettlebell and that sort of thing.
Okay, okay.
And then they slip into a yoga class and they're like, oh, I see. So for the most part, I would say consider it a physical activity. It's,
Mhm.
do it for your body. We all need, when I ended my class this morning, I reminded everybody there to take a moment and acknowledge themselves because they put the oxygen mask on themselves first so that they can go out and be the best that they can be during the day.
Mhm.
And so if you're not familiar with yoga, whether you're spiritual or not, our physical bodies need attention. And no matter what you do, if we're out lifting weights or kicking a soccer ball around, no matter, it's that repetitive action is going to cause some stiffness or some tightness. Or maybe we're sitting all day or driving all day. Our bodies need to be moved. And to be able to take the time to breathe through the movements gives us access to really feeling what the body is saying.
Mm.
There was a time when before yoga where I'd be driving the car and my children were young and I might quick reach behind the car seat to grab something and pull a muscle in my arm.
Yeah.
Where now that movement is like I'm so aware of even the micro movements that, there's rarely do I get injured. So for, somebody that's new to yoga, I would say consider just trying even a gentle class or a restorative class, something that will introduce you to the mindfulness of movement in the body. Even a
Mhm.
yoga nidra class where you're going to observe your thinking, that's going
Mhm.
to give you access at minimum to how your mind affects the nervous system. And then from there, if it speaks to you, if it feels good, then come back and try another one. We're at a point now where we have people that come in once you get into
Yeah.
the heated classes creates more so than any other class we offer, creates a strong sense of dopamine in the body. So when you leave, you're really enjoying that stream of
Yeah.
dopamine. Those
Yeah.
people will come in to a 9:30 class in the morning, and then they'll show up again at 5:30 or 7 o'clock at night. Like, it's just that it feels so good. It's almost like just a
And the
cleanse.
heat does that? The
The heat is gonna make you sweat, but it's gonna
Yeah.
produce more dopamine. We
Okay.
also to heat the studio, we use infrared heaters. So that's affecting your
Mm.
nervous system along with all of your lymph nodes and really helping to detox and cleanse as well.
Okay.
So and once you get used to that experience, you just want more of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what are I'm sure there's many benefits to yoga, but if you had to pick a few or something like that, like what are the top benefits to someone practicing yoga?
um, the 2 things that immediately come to my mind,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a wrestling match. One would be the physical wellness that it creates, but more importantly, it for me, it generates gratitude.
Mm.
There's such an extreme level of gratitude that takes place when you move and you breathe and you're doing it with other people. Others will tell you that, if they've practiced on their own, "Oh, I have my own practice," but it's never the same
Mhm.
than what it is like when you're in a group of people,
Mhm.
all moving and doing. I mean, sometimes they're not all doing the same thing, but we all know that it's this odd sense of we all know we're there for the betterment of something.
Mm.
And so for me, what's been most pronounced is that level of gratitude.
Mm. I love that. I
Yeah.
think that's I've done different community fitness programs and that sort of stuff, like group fitness and
Mhm.
there is you get that sense of community there, right? Where it's
Very much.
yeah, it's cool and it's different, right? It's unique,
Yeah,
right?
it's lovely, and
Yeah.
to watch the relationships happen. The other cool
Yeah.
thing that has happened is I've seen people reunited that haven't seen each other in years or, maybe
Oh,
they
wow.
worked together or they were the same people, they were always in the same coffee line together and, for years, and then they stopped, one of them stopped going, and now all of a sudden they're running into each other at the studio, and it's hysterical. I had no idea how many people knew how many people.
Yeah.
So it's really been great to watch that happen, and it's I watch now there's been book clubs that have come out of the studio. Not I mean, I didn't create them. The instructors didn't create them. Like just groups of people have clumped together and they've
Yeah.
started generating new things, to do together, all which support their health and well-being,
Mhm.
which is just it's phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and we all need that community, that
Yeah,
sense of community.
for
Yeah,
sure.
very cool. Um, so one thing I always like to wrap up with, is being in Palm Harbor and all the different small businesses that we have here. When you're not practicing yoga, or working,
Right.
what is it that you enjoy doing most? Whether it's going to another small business, going to the park, beach, something like that. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing for
Well,
you?
Honeymoon Island is a no-brainer. I love going down to
Mm,
Honeymoon Island.
yeah.
Um I have, as of lately, been I can't say it, frequenting,
Frequenting, yeah.
um, a lot of the different places down in downtown Palm Harbor. I
Yeah.
love hanging out at Bogota or
Mhm.
Fatty's or Fireside and kind of sitting around there and watching people and that sort of thing. But mostly I enjoy being still. There are plenty of times where I'd get on my bike and ride on the trail
Yeah.
and get some quick energy out that way.
Mhm.
Um, but as of late, I've just kind of been watching the world. I have a
Mm.
hammock out front, and I
Oh,
enjoy
cool.
just sitting in the hammock out front of the
Out of
studio.
the studio, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and just, I don't know, lately it's just I've been, appreciating the world around me and just watching it
Mhm.
more.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So,
I love that.
yeah, and I read a lot. I read a lot. I hang out with my kids and,
Mhm.
have a lot of really good friends to gather around, but yoga really does kind of consume much of my life.
Yeah. I bet, and especially owning the studio, right?
Yeah,
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. If
yeah.
people aren't familiar with your studio, where are you guys located?
We're on Florida Avenue at the
Mhm.
top of Florida in downtown Palm Harbor where it meets Omaha. It's 1247 Florida Avenue. It's the big white and purple building out front with the sunshine on it.
Mhm.
And if you're standing right up at the top of the street, you can look down and see the Gulf.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
perfect
so
spot.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.